Auren, welcome back.
Thanks. Excited to be back.
You're how many years into running a data as a service business?
A little over 4.
Okay. I've talked to a lot of infrastructure as a service companies, software as a service companies, platform as a service companies, only one data as a service company. And it's more than 4 years into your company. Why are you the only data as a service company?
Well, there are other data as a service companies, right? So there are plenty of DaaS companies, but of the successful companies in the world, if you think of like Saas versus DaaS, it's probably 500 to 1, maybe even 1,000 to 1. So there's just way more Saas unicorns than there are DaaS unicorns.
Why are you the only non-domain specific data as a service provider?
SafeGraph is a domain specific. So SafeGraph has data about physical places, and that's all the data that we have. So our goal is to have data on every single place in the world and every attribute about the place. And we're very far from that goal today. So there's roughly the same number of places as people worldwide. And there's probably like 10,000 relevant attributes about a place. If you think of your home, it might be the number of bathrooms or what the soil is made out of or what the roof is made out of or, the last time the sale price of the home or all these different attributes you might search for, right? So there's just lots and lots of attributes about a place. And then there's lots of different places in the world.
Are you managing a gazillion SSH database passwords and Kubernetes certs? Meet StrongDM. StrongDM is the only way to simplify infrastructure access and audit controls across any environment, no matter how diverse. StrongDM extends any SSO to centrally manage across to databases, servers, and Kubernetes clusters, so onboarding and offboarding can be done in a single click. Escalate privileges with just-in-time access and automatically log every query and command. Trusted by companies like Hearst, Peloton, and SoFi, StrongDM is the only way to manage access and audit controls at scale without disrupting workflows. Start your 14-day trial today at strongdm.com/sedaily. There's no credit card required. It's a free 14-day trial. Just go to strongdm.com/sedaily. Thanks to StrongDM for being a sponsor.
How much margin in the location data as a service business do you have to unlock before you expand into the second vertical?
Well, I mean, the before you move out of places, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, into something else.
Well, the places market's a really big market. So there are already about 1,000 companies that sell data about physical places. So we're one of 1,000 different companies. There's some huge companies like CoStar is a $35 billion market cap company, and it sells data mostly about offices. So if you want to learn about like the office rents in America, they have a really good data set on that. They also sell some data about apartments. And so there's, CoreLogic recently sold for $6 billion. And they have really good data about physical places. So there's a lot of companies that sell data about physical places. And there's really only 4 things you would want data on, right? So there's data about people, data about places. That's where SafeGraph plays in. There's data about companies or organizations. And then there's data about products. And so those are the 4 main categories. You could join those. And so there's lots of different companies that are on the join of those. And then you could also mix them with time or with price. So if you wanted to get like a stock ticker data feed, right, that would be data about companies mixed with time, mixed with price. So you can get the tick of AT&T going back over 100 years. Maybe 100 years ago, that tick was by day. Now you can get the tick maybe by 1/10 of a second or something. But it's a really, really probably high quality data feed that you can use, and you can back test a lot of your models using that type of data.
So let's say you're post Series B at this point, right? Or Series A?
Yeah, post Series B. Yep.
Post Series B. Your Series B was what, a year ago?
6 months ago.
6 months ago. Okay, so let's say theoretically in another 6 months, you're profitable to the tune of like 3 times your cost of goods sold plus your salaries. Would you reinvest your profits into going deeper into the location data category or the places category, or would you expand into like companies or something.
Yeah, our goal is to have data about every single place in the world. So we're extremely far from that. And I don't think we're going to hit our goal for until 5 years from now. So we would add more countries, we add more places. If you think of data as just rows and columns, right, you can add more rows. So that would be, let's say, more geographies or more places within the US. So for instance, SafeGraph doesn't have data about houses in the US or something. And then you could also add more columns. Those would be more attributes. And our goal would be to add more rows, more columns until we actually hit every, and there's certain things that you prioritize. So, we don't have any data about North Korea today, and we don't have a lot of clients that want data about North Korea, but one day, hopefully we'll also have data about North Korea as well.
I heard some SafeGraph related podcast. I think it was like a couple years ago I think it was after I interviewed Ryan, or before I interviewed Ryan, and it was about like the infrastructure or what we know about the SafeGraph infrastructure publicly. And it sounded a lot like the Google indexing problem, where basically you have indeterminate data about what should be a source of truth. There should be a best article on the internet about how to produce a podcast. It should be somewhat definitive. Similarly, there should be definitive data about like the Subway restaurant on Market Street, right?
Yep.
So it's basically the same problem because you have to aggregate subjective data into an objective truth, right?
Yes,
it's basically the same problem.
Yeah, it's a very similar problem. There are some differences. So in Google's case, they might present you with hundreds of different potential truths, and then they're basically saying to you sort through those truths and you figure out the truth or figure out the right truth for you, right? And so they might give you many different articles about podcasting, and then in SafeGraph, we're really trying to give one answer. So we are trying to get to the truth about a fact, and that fact might be that Subway opens at 8 a.m. on a Tuesday. And of course, that fact might change. It maybe used to open at 7:30 a.m. and now it opens at 8 a.m. And so we need to not only have the fact, but then update the fact on a timely basis. And we gather data from many different sources, and those sources may have conflicting data. One of them might say it's open at 8 a.m. One of them says it's open at 7:30 a.m. Both of them could have been right at certain points in time. But maybe only one of them is right now. Maybe none of them are right now. So we have to use the different types of data to try to figure out the truth and figure it out. And our goal is to be 100% true. We will never be 100% true just because we have billions and billions of facts that we have data on. And so it's impossible to get to 100% true, but we're not satisfied even when we're at 99%. Like, we have to keep going. And our clients find bugs, our users find bugs, our customers find bugs, our employees find bugs all the time. And then one of the things that we also do is publish our bugs. So we try to every month say, hey, we had all these bugs last month. Here's our problems. Here's what we try to do. Here's how we went through it. And it's just a never-ending problem to get to the truth. But we just sell facts. So there's a lot of companies that sell analytics or predictions or lots of other types of things or some sort of subjective. Like for SafeGraph, we're just in the business of selling facts. So it's really just like news. These things happen. This is the truth of something. And then our customers take those facts and then they build upon that. And hopefully they build these great innovations. But the number one thing that they're relying on us for is that those facts are true.
The problem with Google is that there's a veneer of objectivity over ranking of things in the world. But there's actually two ranking systems. There's the paid ranking system and the unpaid ranking system, which is the ads business versus the non-ads business. But in some sense, it's actually even more truthful because it's saying, here's the version of the truth that somebody paid for, and here's the version of the truth that we're presenting in an unpaid capacity. Those are actually just like two different offerings relative to what SafeGraph is offering, which is basically truth as a service.
Yep, that's right.
Is the SafeGraph business potentially proportional to that truth as a service business that Google vends?
I mean, it's in some ways it's also different. Who's your customer, right? And so when you're going to have a different product, even for like truth, you're going to have a different product for different customers. So in some ways, you could think of SafeGraph as just a news organization. We publish news. We publish facts of the world, right? That's what news organizations. If you think of like AP or something, right? They publish facts of the world, or Reuters, or whatever it might be. But a news organization, like their customer is an individual news consumer who can kind of like read through the prose and disambiguate, and they're a relatively intelligent person, and they're trying to understand that. In SafeGraph's case, our customer is generally a data scientist who's taking in a bunch of our facts. They're not maybe not a human is looking over each one, and then they're running it through some sort of model, and they're using that model to either make some sort of prediction or some sort of optimization or some other type of thing. And so they need to, first of all, have these facts categorized in a way where you can run it through a model. So if it was just in prose in an article, this would be very difficult maybe for a data scientist to use that. So if you thought of like maybe you could have a description of a baseball game, or you can have the box score. The box score would be very, very easy for a data scientist to take apart, whereas maybe a long description of a baseball game might be maybe enjoyable for a human to read, but less good for like a machine learning algorithm to parse through. So our customer is that data scientist, but everyone in the Google customer is not necessarily an algorithm, right? They are an algorithm, but they don't sell to algorithms. They're really focused on the individual human to actually go through, and so they have a different experience because of that.
What's the hardest data engineering problem you're dealing with right now?
Well, I mean, there's many hard engineering problems.
I want to know the hardest one.
Well, I'm not, I think the hardest one changes all the time. And so by the time this podcast goes to light, there may be a different one.
Schrodinger's data engineering problem.
Yes, exactly. Yes, that's exactly right. We're not sure if the cat is alive or dead. I think there's a lot of different issues. So, I mean, but the simple one that is always hard is, how do you know something is true, and how do you know it continues to be true? And there's some things that, have some sort of definitive thing, like your birth date is definitive. I know, your birth date is X. Here's when Jeff was born, or
your
something
calendar,
like that.
I know, knows my birthday.
That's right.
Or your email system. One of the two knows my birthday.
That's right. Or at least your birthday, maybe not your date or the time of your birth or something like that. But these are things that are somewhat definitive. And your birth date doesn't change. Your social security number is somewhat definitive. That could change. Maybe you enter the witness protection program or something, but for most people probably is fairly definitive. And, but many other things about somebody could change. Imagine your marital status could change, or obviously your age changes all the time, right? And so there's many different things about you that change. And so even if they were true in the past, they may not be true in the future. And so this is a very, very difficult problem of not only making sure that something is true today, but something continues to be true over time. And store hours is really, so, I mean, we had a very, we just went through this last year and a half with COVID. And so if you just think of like the store hours of a place, so first of all, store hours do change all the time. So that's just something, even pre-COVID, the average McDonald's might have been changing their store hours on a pretty regular basis. And then they may also change. So just because on every Tuesday it was open at 8 a.m., on a specific Tuesday, like maybe that Tuesday happened to be Christmas, that may have very, very different store hours on a very, very specific Tuesday. And so you need a whole other system to understand, like, okay, there are some exceptions to Tuesdays. And then during COVID, in some cases, we had places that were changing their store hours every single day. And so it was really, really hard to stay up to date on some of these things. So even something like a store hour thing, you don't think it changes that much, but it changes all the time. And there's lots and lots of other data that is in flux quite a bit.
To what extent do you involve yourself in lower level engineering related decisions?
Personally?
Yeah, personally.
I wouldn't say I'm personally that involved in most of the engineering decisions. We have a great engineering team at SafeGraph. We have great engineering leadership. We have really, really strong folks all the way through. And so I spent a lot of time on products. So like figuring out like what's the new products we should be building and on talking to customers and trying to learn what they need to do. And I also would never get hired on our engineering teams. Like I'm not a good enough engineer to get a job on our engineering team. Even though, a long time ago, I used to code, even back then, I wasn't good enough to get on the SafeGraph engineering team.
When the decision was made to go more heavily into the Spark realm instead of the Snowflake realm, did you recuse yourself from that decision, or did you listen heavily and consider opining? Or did you just not even think about it? You just let the engineering team, or the decision was made without your intervention at all?
Yeah, 99% of decisions at SafeGraph, maybe even more, are made without even consulting me in any way at all, which is great. So I think CEOs should spend the vast majority of their time on the biggest decisions in the company, and then they should spend some of their time on these tiny little decisions and nothing in between. They should never spend their time on like the mid-level decisions in the company, if possible.
And choice of Spark versus Snowflake is a mid-level decision?
Yeah. It's an important decision. It's not the biggest decision in the world. If you make a mistake, first of all, they're probably both good choices, so it might not even matter. Right? They're both incredible systems to go on, and so that might move later about who you recruit or other types of things. But like. And they're both reversible types of decisions. There may be a cost to reversing it, but they're both reversible type decisions. But like very, very big strategic things, other types. And then these small things will be really important because they add up. So that often like there are things about culture, some of the really, really small things. And so the CEO can't be involved in every small thing, so they need to pick and choose some small things they need to get involved. But the mid-level things are things that personally I try to stay away from as much as possible.
The financing markets are changing rapidly. How do you make sure you right-size your investment capital strategy to the constantly changing times?
Well, I think there's a lot of different flavors of the day that finance markets reward. And I think if you're constantly chasing that, then this is a difficult strategy. So you need to have some sort of consistent view of the world. And SafeGraph happens to be an extremely capital efficient company. That isn't necessarily what is most rewarded today. So today, growth is rewarded well. There's always some sort of give and take between growth and capital efficiency. But today, I would say like 99% of the weight of venture capitalists is on growth, and maybe 1%, or 95.5 on capital efficiency. We've seen scenarios where it's more like 50-50 or other types of things. And so for SafeGraph, we are growing very, very fast. Let's say 100% year over year. But the markets would probably prefer a company that was growing 400% or 300% year over year with a lot less capital efficiency. But we are what we are. We are a extremely capital efficient company that has that's in our DNA, and maybe the markets a year from now will much more reward relatively fast growing, still 100% year over year, but companies that are more capital efficient.
I noticed you brought paper.
Always brought paper. Yeah.
Could you do an Epkin graph right now?
Sure.
Okay. What do you want to do?
Let's say, I don't even know if we can get this on camera here, but
you can definitely do it. You can just draw it and then
try to describe
on camera.
it. Okay, so
or I can take a picture and we can intersperse it.
You always have to start like this, right? So it's
not always.
Not always. Yeah, there's lots of different things. So let's say, a simple one would be number of times Auren has been on Software Engineering Daily, right? First of all, I got to get my signature in. Very important. And then, we'll see 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. And then, let's use a different pen to get this thing going. Okay, so we got 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, nope. 20, right? So, all right. So this is the graph over here. I don't know if we can get this on camera here.
We'll get it on camera.
So yeah, one on 2017, one on 2018, one on 2019, zero on 2020, 2021. We can do one on, so yeah, I launched a podcast.
I mean, can we do a non-axis one? Non-axis description of SafeGraph.
How about my new podcast, World of DaaS versus Software Engineering Daily?
I mean, so I just realized this. I'm embarrassed that I just realized this, but the name of your company is SafeGraph, and you're drawing napkin graphs.
Yeah, I love graphs.
They are safe graphs. A napkin graph is definitively safe.
Yeah. Well, let's.
Is there a dangerous napkin graph?
Let's do that one. Let's do
the dangerous napkin graph.
Napkingraph.com valuation.
Do you own that?
Of course.
Is it used yet?
Nope. No. If you go to it right now, so it's going to look something like this, right? Dollars, time.
This is really what you do in the investment capital markets these days, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
this is the true Trojan horse of SafeGraph.
Yeah, exactly.
The
So
actual business.
that napkingraph.com that I bought for $10 a year ago, that's probably worth at least $12 today. So it's already appreciated 20%. My investment.
How many SafeGraph.x domains do you own?
Oh, good question. Probably not that many.
Not that many.
Yeah. Probably most of the important ones, but some domain troll out there on listening to your podcast wants to go buy SafeGraph.fr or DE or something. We probably don't own all of those.
Have you had to deal with any adversarial attacks, like somebody reselling your data or like doing something weirdly adversarial, or has it been mostly pretty easy business in that regard?
I'd say mostly good. Like, one of the problems with data as opposed to software is when somebody buys your data, they're signing a document saying they can't resell that or put out in the public domain. They have to because your data is your lifeblood. That's your product, and it's very easily to replicate. Is data, and so but luckily, I mean, most people are good actors. They're not trying to do something bad. They may, by accident leave a port open on an AWS bucket or something like that, and then they have to go fix it. But generally, they're trying to do the right thing. And so data companies do have that issue, and some data companies like SafeGraph will salt our data as well. So for certain customers, you can salt your data. You can do, and back in the day, if you know, like the map makers, they would put like fake places in their maps, so when their maps were copied, they knew that
did that really happen?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. So back in the day, like the old map makers in Europe.
Also, why do you know that?
And stuff. Well, if you're a data person, you would that you have to know.
Is that a Wikipedia article?
I'm sure there's a really good Wikipedia article on it.
Dense, obscure book that you own?
Absolutely, probably all the above. Yeah, probably all the above. So yeah, people will salt their data. They'll do other types of things in their data where 0.01% of the data will have.
You can do that technically.
You can create little fingerprints and other types of things, but. Luckily, like we've never had to really use them. We have great customers, and they treat our data with respect. And just like any type of thing that can be used or abused, certainly data can be.
How does the sales incentivization policy at SafeGraph compare to that of LiveRamp? From what you know about LiveRamp, or from what you used to know about LiveRamp?
Well, I mean, I think sales is always enterprise sales is a very, very hard thing to do. I think it's really hard to be an enterprise sales person. It's an incredibly challenging and also rewarding and very, very interesting job. A lot of people don't want to be in enterprise sales, which is partially why enterprise salespeople are paid so much. Because a lot of super talented people, for whatever reason, don't think it's a good profession. I think it's an incredibly rewarding and wonderful profession. It's really interesting. You get to talk to like super smart people about their interesting problems. It's a challenge every single day. So every day you're incredibly challenged. and it's a very, very hard job. And which is kind of often why jobs are often rewarding, is because they're hard. I wouldn't say the challenge of selling DaaS products is obviously it's different than selling SaaS products, but there's a lot of similarities as well. You have to understand the customer's need. You don't want to oversell the customer, so you're really trying to make sure you're delivering something to the customer that the customer wants. In SafeGraph's case, and same with LiveRamp, and most either SaaS companies or DaaS companies, if the customer churns after a year, you don't really make money. In fact, often you'll lose money. And so if you had a lot of customers that were churning after a year, this would be really bad business. And so you would, and you probably would not last very long as a company. So you need to, well, first of all, it starts with the salesperson. You need to make sure that they actually do need this product. You can't sell them something that they don't want or that's going to sit on a shelf or something like that. This would be really bad for your business. You have to make sure that for almost every single customer, there's a true customer need and they really can benefit. It doesn't always work out. So there'll be cases where it doesn't work out, or the customer decides to change their mind, or there's different priorities, or the customer obviously can go out of business. There's many cases where your customer could still churn. But if you have a high rate of churn, you're not going to be a successful company. And from a dollar churn perspective, you need to get to negative churn from a dollar perspective. Every single good enterprise SaaS company or DaaS company has a negative dollar churn. But even from like an actual churn of customers, if you're churning more than, let's say, 10% of your customers a year or something like that, you're going to have a very, very difficult time staying in business.
This podcast is 5 shows per week, 50 weeks per year, 5 ads per show. 5 times 5 times 50 is 1,250 ads per year. We are trying to figure out our sales strategy, and we're entirely bootstrapped. How would you architect that problem?
Well, I don't know. I really don't know anything about podcasting. I mean, one of the things with ads, I used to know a lot more about the ads business, but there's a lot of ad aggregation companies because there's a lot of publishers that are, similar to you, that are relatively small. They've got very, very core niche audience, whether it's for podcasting or a website or, whatever the publisher might be, a social media app or something like that. They got and they can't necessarily afford to have a whole big sales channel. And also a buyer of ads wouldn't want to just spend all their time on just that one, that one particular publisher. Because that doesn't necessarily hit their reach. So there are often all these aggregators that sit in between the publisher and the buyer.
SSPs.
Could be lots of different types of things, right? So SSPs are one type of aggregator, but there's dozens of different types of aggregators. And in the old school, there were like just people that would rep many different newspapers and many different magazines and stuff like that.
Agencies.
Yeah, it could be an agency, or it could be other types of reps.
So when you were doing LiveRamp, you thought of the agency. You could kind of bucket the agencies with DSPs or SSPs, sort of.
Well, not necessarily, but
you just call them aggregators in your head?
There's all these different types of aggregators, and they do things in different ways. Again, you can have an old school aggregator, which is just like a person that would try to insert this little subscription notice into all these different types of magazines and newspapers and stuff like that. They would go to all of them and then make some sort of deal, and then they would get to, let's say, millions of people, and then that could work. But if it got to only in the hundreds of thousands, it wouldn't work for the end advertiser. And so they would go around and take and then they'd take let's say a 10% brokerage fee or something like that for making that happen. So a lot of aggregators have existed since basically modern advertising in the 30s started happening. So the last 100 years, once you started getting professional advertising, you also started getting aggregators who could help make that happen and help make both the buyers and the sellers happier. And aggregators exist everywhere, right? So in every single markets need some sort of aggregation to happen, especially if there's somebody who's like a market maker who's bringing buyers and sellers together, especially when you either you want to sell to lots of different types of people or you want to buy from lots of different types of people. Then you need some sort of middleman who's helping make that happen. And sometimes that's a marketplace like that we're familiar with, like Airbnb is kind of acts as that kind of marketplace. And these marketplaces as a company can be really, really valuable, but sometimes it's actually just an individual. And a lot of well-known professions are individual. If you think of a real estate broker or an investment banker or something, they're middlemen, and then they're taking transactions from both buyers and sellers or from one or the other.
So let's say I want to take a highly manual podcast ad sales business and turn it into an automated ad sales business. Do you have any pieces of advice?
I don't. I mean,
nothing.
Yeah.
Come on, man!
Yeah.
You built an ad tech company.
Yeah. Well. I mean, I guess the one advice is just figure out. Okay, like, is there a way to get scale, right? So, is there a way to like maybe
1,250 ads per year? That's not scale.
Well, not really. Yeah.
It's kind of scale.
Yeah, it's kind of. But maybe people want to. Maybe someone doesn't want to buy unless they're reaching an audience of X millions, right?
I don't need that customer.
Well, maybe you do. So maybe you can go to the 10 other podcasts that are like you, and you could join together. And
there's not any other podcasts like me.
Okay, well, of course not. Yeah.
Except Data as a Service podcast.
Yeah, World of DaaS. Yeah,
World
exactly.
of DaaS.
Yeah, we don't have ads, unfortunately. So, yeah, but I mean, there might be ways to go and to join together to get some sort of scale to understand that.
But is that the best approach? I mean,
I don't know.
How many deep
This
partnerships did you do with LiveRamp, or did you kind of try to own the stack?
Well, LiveRamp's is middleware company, right? So
we're kind of middleware. We're like middleware for sales and marketing.
Well, you're a publisher. Right. So you are a publisher. You publish a.
We're also a sponsored content company, or like maybe a tracking company if we want to do tracking.
Yeah, like a good publisher, like whether it's The Economist or something like that, right? Like a high-end publisher that publishes something really valuable.
But like you described SafeGraph as a news company earlier.
Yeah.
So why can't we be a data company?
You can be. Yeah.
Okay. Should we be?
I don't know. Yeah, I think.
But how do you like marshal the troops? I mean, is the goal to actually just think of the idea that is believable, and then you marshal the troops behind that idea?
Well, I think every company has a different kind of vision and what they're attempting to do, and I also think it's also like where you are in your life and stuff. So I think there's a small number of problems that are key problems in the world that are going to make the world that could really and then solving those problems could really make the world a significantly better place. And one of those problems is the problem of democratizing data. And so you could see a world in the future where basically 12 companies control most of the data. And that's a world where if you believe data is the core fuel to innovation, then that's a world where you're just going to have a lot less innovation because just 12 companies are not going to be as motivated. And then the majority of the rents for those innovations are going to accrue to those 12 companies. And neither of which is a world that I want to live in. And I don't think most people listening to this podcast would be interested. And so solving that problem is a really, really, really big deal, really allowing, truly democratizing access to data so that any innovator can get access to data. Just like today, any innovator can get access to compute. All you need is a credit card and a bit of technical knowledge, and you can get access to compute. And that's really opened up the aperture for innovators all over the world. The same thing should be true for data. You shouldn't have to have a proprietary BD deal to get access to data. You shouldn't have to, have some sort of other like proprietary system to get access to data. It should be available to anybody, and they should be able to start innovating on top of that data.
Stack Overflow for Teams brings the power of Stack Overflow to your company. It's an easy-to-use, flexible platform that helps thousands of developers answer questions and make progress in their work. Features in Stack Overflow for Teams include robust search functionality, so that you can easily benefit from the questions and answers documented on your team. Surface the most important information about onboarding, the development lifecycle, feature releases, and more. Stack Overflow for Teams saves users time and it powers up the workday by clearing the obstacles caused by unanswered questions. Try it now. Create a free team at stackoverflow.com/teams/SEDaily. That's stackoverflow.com/teams/SEDaily. TripleByte is a network of 200,000 top engineers. TripleByte works with more than 400 tech companies, including Coinbase, Zoox, Snap, Gusto, and Facebook. TripleByte puts engineers in control of their job search and helps engineers find the role that's right for them. TripleByte provides a better hiring process. There's no ghosting. TripleByte gives feedback on what companies do or don't do with your application and improve your chances over time. There are engineering-specific filters, not just location or job title. TripleByte rewards companies for being transparent and penalizes them if they're dishonest about their culture or process. You get to set granular preferences so you can apply quickly to only the roles that you're interested in. TripleByte uses your preferences and your company activity to help you know which companies are most likely to accept your application. TripleByte helps you show your skills, even if you don't have traditional credentials. Hundreds of engineers have gotten jobs through TripleByte assessments without a degree or prior engineering work experience. TripleByte offers skill quizzes on a wide range of engineering skills like back-end, front-end, machine learning, and algorithms. You can also show off your language skills with quizzes like Java, JavaScript, and Python. TripleByte is free for engineers. Companies pay money to TripleByte because TripleByte makes hiring processes more efficient. Visit triplebyte.com/SEDaily to sign up for free. That's triplebyte.com/SEDaily.
So is your goal to push towards a world with open data as fast as possible?
Yeah, I mean, open is always, but I want open access to data. So it shouldn't be that, like, SafeGraph would never sign an exclusive deal. Let's say somebody wanted to get our data just for like the insurance industry or something like that. Like we would never, or just for a specific market. I have the exclusive deal to your data to sell into, Japan or something like that. We would never sign a deal like that because we want to make sure that everybody can get access to our data. Maybe that's a huge company, but maybe that's a small researcher somewhere as well. And they should have the equal access to our data so that they can build things on top of that data.
So the thing that's like good about focusing on location data is that it is in many ways non-controversial. I mean, you can kind of compare yourself to the Yelp API. Like I think I mentioned this to you some time ago, is that I used the Yelp API in college. I had a lot of fun playing around with the Yelp API. It's like actually a really fun API.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so the idea of building lots of products around SafeGraph location data is totally conceivable to me.
Yeah.
But if it's a mission-oriented company and you really want to drive forward this mission, probably the way to do it would be to do something shocking, like public healthcare data or something. Anonymized public healthcare data. Let's say you can solve K anonymity and do public healthcare data related to like people who have had trouble during the pandemic or something like that.
Yeah.
Like you could do something really shocking,
Yeah.
draw a lot of attention, draw a lot of media. Maybe that would be a better approach.
But
it's not safer.
Yeah,
right?
It could be. And
it's risky.
And that's actually what we actually looked at that when we were first starting the company, was actually data about healthcare. And I was involved I'm involved in a company called DataVant, which is kind of like a middleware for healthcare data. And I think that's a really great thing. You get when you're starting a company, when you're like 2-3 people and you're first starting a company, and even if you're 100 people as a company, which is what SafeGraph is today, we're roughly about 100 people. You can't do that many things. So if you're trying to do very many things, you're very likely not to win in any of them. So you have to pick a very, very small number of things that you're going to do well. And that means there's just lots of things that you want to do that you can't do. And there's many, many things you'll never, ever get to do. And you have to be okay with that. And that's true in life too. Like, I always had this idea that I was going to write a novel.
Yes.
One day.
I remember this.
You remember this. Okay. So yeah, you have to be okay with just deciding you're not going to do it.
Ghostwriting has gotten really good.
You're right. Maybe you'll change your mind. Maybe I'll change my mind. but you have to be okay with basically not pursuing every single thing. You don't have enough time in your entire life to pursue every dream.
If you ever want to publish a book through Software Daily, written by or without a ghostwriter, fully paid, all you have to do is send me an email.
All right, awesome. Okay.
It's a standing invitation.
Okay, I'm going to publish, but it's going to be the napkin graph.
It can be the napkin graph coffee table book.
All right, let's do it.
The napkin graph coffee table book by Auren Hoffman,
and
published by Software Daily. Now, do you want them like blown up so much that they're pixelated so that it's like a big coffee table book?
Yeah, I want a nice coffee table book. Yes, you can.
But with pixelated napkin graphs.
No, it doesn't have to be pixelated.
Or well-designed napkin
look like
graphs.
this. It could be the actual.
Do you want to like
size.
outsource them to artists and have the artists like redo them? With
No.
really
I want them to look raw.
Got it.
Raw with my terrible handwriting and everything like that. Yeah, absolutely. And well, let's publish this book together. Okay, we already have this idea. Every single subscriber to Software Engineering Daily will buy it for their parents for the holidays. It'll be a big seller. We'll make billions of dollars, and I'll you can keep your share, and I'll give my share to charity. So it'll be a really fun project.
I really want people to know how much value I've gotten from your writing over the years. I've gotten just a tremendous amount of value.
So nice.
Like from your content, from your podcasts, all the various things. I've gotten a lot of value out of it. And so I actually got you like some groceries.
Oh, all right.
As a gift.
Oh, okay.
You can
Holy mackerel.
take a look at them.
Okay.
On air or off air. They're just
Wow.
a collection of things that are they're representative of the heterogeneity of ideas that you've given me.
Oh, wow.
So
Thank you.
it's a gift.
I appreciate it. Whoa, I've got a booster shot. I didn't need to have one of these today. Okay, this is good stuff. Okay. Wow.
It's some Magic cards.
Oh, Magic the Gathering. Okay.
So you still haven't played that game, right?
I still have not played Magic the Gathering. I'm waiting for my kids to get into it. We've been playing some Pokemon, which is kind of similar, I think, right? Has some similarities, which has been fun. But I really want to get into Magic the Gathering really bad. And I've been just waiting. I think my kids might need to be like 1 year older before we're like ready to really, really dive in.
Can I give you a brief history of Magic the Gathering?
Yeah.
Okay, Magic the Gathering, if I have this right, started in 1993 by Richard Garfield. Richard Garfield is an expert in computational complexity theory. So he's essentially a guy who has studied what makes situations complex. And that's why he was able to make the best game in history.
You think Magic Gathering is the best game in history?
It's not even a conversation.
Okay, all right. Well, now I really need to
except
play
for
it.
Supercompute.
Okay. Oh, Supercompute. I don't know Supercompute.
That's the game company I'm starting.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Got it. Okay. All right.
The product probably will be out by the time this airs. The first product.
Awesome. All right. I'll try to get that
too. It will
too.
be the best game you've ever played.
Okay.
Maybe not initially, but eventually.
Okay.
So started in 1993 by Richard Garfield. He's a computer science genius. They play tested the game in cardboard. They drew out the cards on cardboard so that they could test it.
Yeah.
Once they knew they had a good game, they got it printed. The company was called Wizards of the Coast. Wizards of the Coast makes Magic the Gathering. In 1999, Wizards of the Coast was acquired by Hasbro. Hasbro, as you know, is a toy company.
Yeah.
Toy companies are great. Toy companies don't know how to make software. So there was a chasm that every games company had to cross into digital, and Wizards of the Coast fell down the chasm because they're owned by Hasbro.
Okay, so they had a great card game, but they weren't able to make a digital game.
So they made a digital game. It's actually pretty good. It's called Magic Online Digital Objects. Apparently the story is, and I think it was originally made in 2002, and I think that it was originally made by this company called Leaping Lizard, which was a contractor that apparently they somehow entered into a conversation with Wizards of the Coast / Hasbro. Essentially, they were dared by Wizards of the Coast that Wizards of the Coast said, okay, look, if you can actually make this into, because it's a very complicated game with a lot of rules.
Yeah.
And Wizards of the Coast essentially asserted that this was not possible to do in software. Leaping Lizard proved them wrong.
Yeah.
Except it was like Leaping Lizard, a random software company. So they made it work, but it's not great software. And then that became Magic Online Digital Objects. That's like the lineage of that game. So they've got a whole lot of technical debt in that product. Okay. It's still only on Windows. It's not on Apple. And this is
why can't someone just buy the Magic the Gathering from Hasbro, like some smart group of people and then like create
because
it into an amazing thing.
Because it's a crown jewel in a publicly owned company.
Okay, is it very profitable?
It's a crown jewel. It's a crown jewel, and I mean, so Magic Online Digital Objects is a great game. It's like actually become a very, very good game, but it's a monolithic .NET application that only runs on Windows. And so the solution to this, apparently, according to Wizards of the Coast / Hasbro, is to make a brand new digital game experience called Magic the Gathering Arena. The secondary economy... First of all, the secondary economy in Magic is super important. You open up these booster packs, it's like random lottery tickets. Yeah. It's like legal gambling, basically.
Yeah.
This is another problem with the game is essentially it's legal gambling for children.
Yeah.
So it's casinos for children. Yeah. That's what Magic the Gathering is.
Yeah, I don't see it as a problem. I see it as a feature. Yeah.
We could go very deep. I mean, do you want your kids playing No Limit Hold'em for thousands of dollars?
Maybe. Not for thousands of dollars.
Maybe.
But yeah, for thousands of pennies, maybe.
Maybe?
Yeah.
I mean, would you be okay with like the Roblox? Let's say somebody made somebody made No Limit Hold'em in Roblox, because Roblox is a platform for making games, right?
Yeah.
Let's say somebody made No Limit Hold'em for Roblox. Your kids can only lose up to $100 per day. Is that something you want in the world?
No, that might not be something I want. Yeah.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
Is there a way to regulate that today?
Yeah.
Unclear.
Yeah.
So anyway, so back to
So what was the Mt. Gox stuff, right? Was the original it was originally like some sort? It was for the secondary economy originally, right?
Yes.
Before it moved to a Bitcoin.
Yes.
Thing. And that was the genesis. This kind of like Tokyo exchange for Magic the Gathering cards. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, secondary market built, I believe, on top of the so Magic the Gathering Online Digital Objects client has a built-in like secondary economy system, but it's just encased in this terrible software, this terrible .NET application that's not good, not a good software experience.
Now, why is so it's like on this thing it says 13 plus. Okay, I play a lot of games. My kids are not yet 13. They're not. And we play a lot of my kids play a lot of games. So we play a lot of Settlers of Catan, and we play a lot of other games. And most of those, I'd say they might say 10 plus or 11 plus or something. And even though my kids might be younger than that, they can play that. But why is it so complicated? It says 13 plus. You rarely see a game at 13 plus.
The game has some design problems. That's one of the reasons. But I think the true reason for the 13 plus rating is that the earliest iterations of the game had some violence and occult symbolism.
So there's some violence in there. Okay.
And also the game originally had a patina of gambling because there was this ante feature. Originally, Magic was played for ante. They're in the early ante. Like literally you sit down with your deck, your opponent sits down with their deck, and you ante the top card and you just play for it. Sometimes you flip an expensive card, sometimes they flip an inexpensive card. Ooh, it's pretty fun.
Okay.
It's pretty fun. It's not as fun as like tournament Magic for cash, which is very fun, but also low stakes. Strangely, it's like the most cerebral, best game in the world, and it's only played for low stakes. It's a better game than poker, and it's played for significantly lower stakes. Anyway, so the thing that really just irritates me. So this game is essentially my religion. Like I grew up with this game.
Now, how much like in some games, how much of luck is a factor? Like if you have someone, like if Roger Federer plays me in tennis, like he's 100% chance going to win, right? If I play a grandmaster in chess, they're 100% going to win. But if I play Settlers of Catan, I have to say I'm a mid-level player in Settlers of Catan. If I play even the best players, I still have a pretty decent chance of winning in Settlers of Catan.
And that's a good feature.
Yeah, which is great. That's why I love playing with my kids. Is like they can beat me legitimately. I don't have to play down. Like they can legitimately beat me, and it's a really fun. Like, well, how does that work with Magic the Gathering?
So you want that feature, but what you want to avoid is the degenerate scenarios where you can know. Let's say I sit down. I'm playing against you. I do what's called a mulligan. A mulligan is where your hand has the incorrect distribution of card types. So basically, every opening hand you have, you need to have a proportional distribution between what's called lands and spells.
Okay.
Lands are your resources. Spells are the things that you're doing with the resources. If you get a resource imbalance, it's like you just can't win.
Yeah.
So the way that they fix this is if you get a 7-card hand with a resource imbalance, you shuffle it back in, but you draw 6 cards.
Okay, got
So
it.
then so I start with 6 cards, you start with 7.
Yep, got it.
They've done calculations, or they've run some data, so I've heard. I don't know if I trust this data. Maybe SafeGraph can solve this.
Yeah. We're going to be selling data on Magic the Gathering in the future. Yeah, that's a new
On
product
mulligan
coming out. Yeah.
statistics. So apparently if you mulligan, on average, you lose 23% of the time more.
Yeah.
So
okay,
you
got it. So
basically...
it's not too bad. Yeah.
Well, but it's problematic because the problem is in those scenarios, you often mulligan to 6 cards. The 6 cards are marginal.
Yeah.
So imagine a situation where you start with 7 cards. They're great. I start with 6 cards. They're marginal. We're going to sit down and we're going to play for 15 minutes. I'm going to have a horrible experience. You're going to smash my face.
A typical Magic the Gathering game is 15 minutes or
5 to 30 minutes.
Okay, well, that's
It's
great.
highly
That's
variable,
also good too.
depending on the format.
Then you just play another game. Like it's
Yeah,
fun.
and
Like,
occasionally it
it's-
takes like 2 hours for a game.
Okay.
Very rarely you're like, why is this game still going?
Okay.
It's really fun. But that's a problematic scenario where I am sitting here and I know I'm going to spend the next 10 to 15 minutes losing to you.
Yep.
It's going to take you 10 to 15 minutes to like, kill me. And I'm just sitting there the whole
And
time.
how much have you spent on Magic the Gathering cards in the
Money?
last? Yeah, like just buying
I've made
decks
money.
and-
I've made money in Magic over the
Okay,
years.
got it, because you're betting and stuff like that.
I mean, I was playing in tournaments. I was like buying and selling cards. I was just hustling.
Okay,
pretty
got
much.
it. Okay, interesting. Yeah, yeah, sounds fun. Okay,
It's really fun.
I want to
But anyway,
play. I'm worried I might get addicted to it.
I just need you
so,
to know. I
yeah.
just need you to know how frustrating this company, this. Imagine if somebody acquired your religion and then just managed it into the ground.
Yeah.
That's what has happened. And I say that with all love and due respect to the organizations involved. It's just they're making Stranger Things cards now.
Yeah.
So they're literally taking the brand and using it to promote Stranger Things, which is fine, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Do you want Christmas brought to you by SafeGraph? Like, maybe. Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably
well, it was
like
brought originally by Coca-Cola, right? So yeah.
What?
Yeah. That Coca-Cola was good at like really making Christmas.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Santa Claus. They help create like the modern day. And I mean, I hope no young kids are listening to this. Yeah. So yeah.
Anyway, so the thing that really frustrated me was that they basically made the second game, Magic the Gathering Arena, and the cards that you own in Magic the Gathering Digital Objects, the first game that they made, do not transfer over. So imagine basically somebody has forked the economy and they said, you don't get the rights to the money that you already made.
Got it. So you have all these valuable digital assets and you can't move them over.
I don't even own any digital objects. This was just frustrating to me as basically like, we can't solve this. Like, they can't figure out how to port their $1 billion business line to Apple.
Yeah.
It's a software problem. It's a database problem. Like, this is not hard.
Yeah.
Call in the consultants.
Well, one of the things that, in general, digital assets is that it is there's in many cases very, very hard to have a secondary economy in digital assets. So like I just bought a new car. I had an old car.
Yeah, I've seen the blog posts.
I'm selling the old car. It's actually great. You get to sell it. Someone can buy it. Whatever the market is, there's some sort of clearing price. And, I haven't sold it yet, but I feel confident we'll sell the old car. But I have all these like old Kindle books that like I'm not going to read anymore. I have no way of like selling or old movies I bought on iTunes or, whatever it might be. I have no way of selling these things to somebody who might actually really benefit from them and like them. And so I think it is always often hard when, some sort of, there's usually some sort of central authority that controls these digital assets and creates some sort of rules around them. And so even though that Kindle book, if you think of like a paperback maybe costs you $12 to buy, the Kindle book maybe costs you $10 to buy, but the paperback at least you can resell, let's say for $4, whereas the Kindle you may have like zero chance of reselling. Not only do you have zero chance of reselling, you can't even really gift it to somebody. So at least in the paperback, you can give it to a buddy. Say, hey, I love this book. You will benefit from this book. Go check it out. The Kindle, much, much more difficult to go do that, or an Audible kind of book, or whatever it is much more difficult to gift to a friend or something. Or so I think these digital things are hard to like think through. And it would be really great if there are like secondary economies for them. Even things that aren't necessarily digital are sometimes hard, like plane tickets. I think airlines would make way more money if there was a secondary economy for plane tickets. Because first of all, they could charge a lot. I would pay a lot more for a plane ticket if I knew I could resell that ticket and I didn't have to deal with like the plane company of having, there was just like a simple secondary market for me to move those tickets around or something. And so you have all these other types of things. I think certainly that the events companies, once StubHub actually became much more legit, they actually end up making more money with the advent of StubHub, because people were willing to pay a lot more because they knew it was easy to, even if they were going to take a loss on it. It was easy to move that ticket again. Whereas before in the old days, I used to buy and sell tickets when I was in high school. And for like U2 concerts and stuff like that.
Would you say U2 concerts?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Or Guns N' Roses, or, all these different concerts.
You go to concerts?
I would go too, but yeah, I would like buy 4 tickets and sell 3 or something like that.
What was the best concert you went to in high school?
Guns N' Roses was really good. Madison Square Garden, Guns N' Roses. Oh my gosh!
You grew up in New York?
Yeah, I grew up in the suburbs. Yeah.
Okay.
So that was like amazing. Soundgarden opened for them. It was incredible. Incredible.
It's like 2 different eras, right?
Oh,
Soundgarden's a very different era from Guns N' Roses.
Yeah, but I mean,
but similar.
It was awesome. Yeah, it was awesome.
Did you ever go to Half Price Books? You ever been to Half Price Books? Do you know that store? Have you ever heard of that?
I don't think so.
So it's like a great place where you can buy used books, and you can also just take all your books there and give it to them.
Yeah.
And they give you like a check.
Yeah.
So you just bring in your books into the back, and they just give you a check, and then you can take it to the front.
There's a place like that
books.
in San Francisco. I don't even know if it's still around. It's called Green Apple Books on Clement Street.
It is around.
Okay.
It is around.
Yeah.
In fact, I passed by it the other day.
So I used to always do that. I would take all my books to Green Apple Books. They'd give me, most of them, they'd give me a check for $0. They'd say, I don't know.
This is in college?
Yeah. No, post-college. But let's say I was in my early 20s. I would bring like 30 books
Hadn't
there.
You sold a business by then?
I was still, I'm a frugal guy. And then they would give me credit, and they would also be really knowledgeable. So they would often say, I would go there all the time. For a while, I was going there for a while, like every week sometimes. And often I would sell books back to them that I bought from them. And then they were very knowledgeable, and they would be able to suggest different books that I could buy.
Really?
Yeah, it was great.
Wow.
So it was, this was maybe a different era, and but it was a really great place. And sometimes I'd just sit there and just read a book.
Just look through stuff.
I'd read like a couple chapters of a book, just like sitting on the floor and
so
put it
many
back
books.
in the shelf.
There's so many books.
Yeah. And that's one of the great things about, which is different from, I think, today, is this idea of like browsing is a weird kind of concept. And so today I don't really browse. I don't actually go into most physical stores, even like whether it's a grocery store or whatever. But back in the day, I used to browse, and I used to spend a lot of time in bookstores, just like going through and just like I would read a chapter. I'd sit down on the ground and just read a chapter, and then I'd just put it back, and then I would like, and just by like the cover of the book or the title, just completely random. And I used to this is pre-kids. I used to spend either every Saturday or every Sunday just reading. I would spend probably 8 hours just reading, and often I would just do it in my home or at a park or something like that. But sometimes I'd like walk into a bookstore, especially if I was in a new city or something. I love just going to a random bookstore and just opening up some random book. And some of the best books I've ever read in my life were just like random books I found. And sometimes they were books that were on sale for like $1, and you would just go through and read them. And some of them
when you say
transformative.
Books you've read, does that mean books that you've completed, or just books that you've read a page from?
I mean, in my case, I would say like the transformative books would be books I completed, because if it was a good book, I probably completed it.
Right.
And so a lot of great books I've read a chapter or two here and there, but most of these books, a lot of times I'd end up buying it. And then I don't think I could ever finish a book at the bookstore. So I'd maybe start it there, and then, this is good, I want to keep it. I don't go buy the book, and it's kind of a try before you buy things. It's really great. And then take it home or take it to the park or whatever, and just kind of or take it to a pizza place and just kind of go through it.
Have there been any books of that caliber that have been written about the last 15 to 18 months? As in COVID, like the COVID experience?
Yeah, well, there's a new one by Neil Ferguson. I haven't read it yet. I have it, own it. I own the book. and I'm planning on reading it. That kind of like talks about not only this experience, but Neil is an amazing historian, and so then he goes through all these other different pandemics that we've had over the year. We've had one in the 50s, obviously we had a famous one in the 20s, and kind of went through the different pandemics and tries to understand like from historical. He builds what's similar about other pandemics, what's different. Et cetera. And I've kind of like I've talked to him about it, read summaries of the book, but I haven't yet read the book in full. I'm planning on doing that in the next couple of months.
Are there any other pandemics in history with this much political intrigue?
Well, I think most pandemics caused intrigue. So if you go all the way back to the Black Death or something like that, like it caused a lot of intrigue, or the conquistadors bringing smallpox to Latin America, obviously, really changed and altered the political landscape for hundreds of years. So I do think pandemics do make a lot of whenever you have big change in the world, obviously that is almost always accompanied by some sort of political change.
Do you have any predictions for big political changes? Things that are non-taboo political changes, maybe preferences in restaurants, as seen by SafeGraph data.
Well, yeah. I mean, I do think I think society is always changing, which is great. I mean, it's always
And
nice
can you see it? Can you see it in real time through SafeGraph data? Can you see societal changes?
I mean, we have, so one of the great things that we did right at the start of COVID is we started this SafeGraph community. I think we now have about 10,000 academics that are very, very active. And we have a lot of non-academics too that are very, very active in the SafeGraph community. We've had hundreds of...
Mostly through Slack. Is it a Slack channel or what?
Yeah, we have a Slack channel. Yep. So you can, anyone go. It's free. The Slack channel itself is free. You can just go to the SafeGraph community.
Have you used Slack huddles yet, by the way? Slack huddles, these like audio things?
I haven't done those
yet.
My
God, they're so good.
Okay,
so
cool.
Clubhouse is like kind of okay.
Yeah.
Slack huddles are amazing.
Okay. I'll check them out.
I've
seen the feature. It looks
I'm
cool.
enjoying it more than podcasts, actually.
Okay.
Because it's just you get in a conversation with all the people that you want to hang out with anyway.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that's cool.
Anyway, sorry. So the community.
So we have this like community of all these different researchers, hundreds and hundreds of published academic papers. And so you have some of the smartest people in the world that are using our data to learn about like what's going on.
Because you have some free deal for academics, right?
That's right. So if you're an academic, we'll basically give you free data.
What constitutes an academic, by the way?
Let's say someone in a PhD program at a well-known university.
What about kid in India?
So not yet. So, but ideally we'll have something like that for maybe somebody like that. So yeah, we have to, they have to be part of an academic institution. They have to sign certain agreements, et cetera. And so we have a list of, maybe a couple thousand institutions that you need to be part of, that are relevant, et cetera, today. And hopefully we can democratize that more over time, but it's just been incredible. And then they have their own lens. And then of course, like any data is only part of a solution. So, you probably heard my analogy. Like I like to think of SafeGraph data as an ingredient. So we sell let's say high quality butter to pastry chefs, and those pastry chefs take our high quality butter and they take many, many other ingredients, and then they make this amazing croissant. And then of course, the end consumer of that innovation, that croissant may not even know there's butter in it. They certainly don't know there's SafeGraph butter in it, right? But the chef knows how important that ingredient is. But again, there's many, many ingredients that go in. So if you think of these academic papers, okay, we're an important ingredient, but there's so many other ingredients. And then of course it's their own ingenuity and all the different things that they have and their own experiences with this particular, the South Side of Chicago or whatever. They have this amazing experience there. And then they're able to create really great data really great innovation, really great paper. And again, we're just one of many, many ingredients that go into this incredible innovation.
So I really like the company Palantir, and they published. There was one article that was written about this company that I thought was revealing. It's a pretty shadowy company. There's really not much known about it. But the thing that I really like that they said publicly, I think the CEO said this, is that they try to basically they see surveillance as this really, really big potential problem. And so they try to alleviate the problem by defining the cutting edge of it. And I feel like that's true of a lot of newer technology where it really takes a person with an up close view of what's going on in technology to understand how dangerous some of this stuff is, like, or potentially dangerous, basically to self-regulate. Do you have any perspectives on like how we get to a place of sensible regulation around modern technology, like a place where we can move beyond where like senators are asking Mark Zuckerberg about his subscription service? Like, how do we get real conversation about like actual software related, like why are we just like not having real conversations about technology and like its impact on the world? It's like not in the level that it should be had. Like, what was so special about Quora back in the day, right? We had these like really in-depth conversations where people were taking topics very seriously.
I mean, I push back a little bit. I think those conversations are happening.
They're happening.
Yeah, I mean, they're not.
But not in a public forum, not on stage.
Well, I don't think any good conversations happen in public forums, really. I mean, because if you're starting to have a conversation, you need to be a bit vulnerable, and you need to be playing with ideas. And playing with ideas in a public forum is incredibly dangerous. So you need to be playing with ideas with a group of people that have assume positive intent of you. And are, know that you're a good person and you're trying to, get to the right place, and you're still in the ideas playing stage. You're in the learning stage. You're asking dumb questions, right? Imagine imagine the ridicule that you get in public if you ask a stupid question or something. So I think these things happen outside of the public realm, and I think one of the unfortunate things is that the public realm is pervading everywhere. And so if you nowadays, if you ever go to like listen to a panel at a conference, like it's never interesting. In fact, if you talk to a PR person and the PR person is like prepping you to go to the panel, they will specifically
This is,
tell
by the way,
you,
Clubhouse versus Huddles. Huddles are private,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
They're not recorded.
Yeah.
They're not public.
Yeah, exactly.
Clubhouse I love Clubhouse, but it's a little bit uninteresting because everybody's performing.
Yeah,
in a very straightforward way.
Yeah, that's probably right. I haven't spent that much time on Clubhouse, but if you're on a panel, your PR person will say, "Don't be interesting." They'll say, "Sound smart." It's important to sound smart, but not interesting. And so anytime you ever see somebody
told you that before?
Panel, every PR person
What?
tells you that. That is the first thing that they'll tell someone who's like smart and who's ever tried to be interesting before. They'll say, don't try to be interesting, because if you try to be interesting, there's an extremely high likelihood that you're going to say something you regret, or something that could taken out of context or whatever. So if they're let's say a PR person is managing a CEO, or they're managing a senator, or whatever it might be, they'll just say, sound smart. It's important. You don't want to sound stupid. So sound smart. Say something that you've said before, ideally. And here's the notes. Here's the things that are safe to say. And that's what everyone tries to do. I think it's very, very risky for people to try to be interesting in public. Now, eventually they can say something that is interesting after they've developed it with a small group of trusted people, et cetera. But I think one of the problems in the world is that many people have a small group of people that they work on something like this with, but those small group of people tend to be very similar to them, right? Because they tend to be like their super close friends that are going to assume positive intent. And so they're not necessarily pushing them on the idea or helping them work through that idea in the right way. And I've certainly been lucky, and other people I'm sure have been lucky, to find a group of friends or a group of people to work with that have very, very diverse views on things and very, very diverse backgrounds. And that's super, super helpful, but also I think super rare that you can have this kind of, let's say, off the record conversation with groups of people. Like, if you're a libertarian like Bitcoin enthusiast and you're in a little libertarian Bitcoin Slack group, yeah, you can have these like interesting conversations on the margin with folks, but you may have like very, very, very similar worldviews. Again, it can help you sharpen your view and understanding, and they could push you and help you. But if you have people with very, very different views, but still assume positive intent, which is kind of the core thing that could really help you take to the next level of how you're thinking about it, or they can give you a really good straw man on, okay, this have you actually thought about this, or I like that, I like it, but without arguing, because sometimes arguing that's not productive, or just trying to score points. It's more like, okay, I'm going to help you get your views better. I'm going to help you think about it in a different way, etc.
You know what's a good example of this is, speaking of cryptocurrencies were conceived not only to allow people to have decentralized free speech with regard to money, it was also about having low cost or zero cost payments. And I feel like the entire crypto ecosystem has lost that message. It's become all entirely about this decentralization, free speech thing. It is no longer about simply building a low-cost financial system. I mean, do you have any have you looked at fintech at all? Do you have any understanding of why things just don't get cheaper over time?
Well, I think they're starting to. So if you're an average consumer in America, like, there's starting to be all these new fintech banks which charge, like, very much lower fees or maybe zero fees. Whereas before, like, just like being able to have like operating a checking account at a more traditional bank may have been very, very expensive for people that didn't have X dollars in the bank, or they don't charge overdraft fees. You have these other types of things. So, like, I would say for certain types of class of people, obviously it's a lot cheaper to borrow money today than it was 10 years ago. So all these different solutions have been there. If you think of, like, trading stocks, it's cheaper. So there's definitely a lot of costs that are coming down. And if you think of ETFs and the Vanguard revolution, right? So it's cheaper to buy and hold things. And so I think these things have been incredibly good. The payments is difficult. And so but I think slowly over time you'll start to see that. One of the great things about crypto is I think you have these two just extraordinary people in crypto, and I think part of the reason of the success is basically about these two extraordinary people. So first of all, you have Satoshi, right? We don't know whether it's him or her, or a group of people, or we don't know anything necessarily about who this person is, but this is a kind of a mythical person, and the fact that it is a mythical person is why it's like, this person can't, like, go cheat on their spouse or something, because before we know this person is dead, right? We don't know who this is, and so we can ascribe, like, all this goodness to this person, without just, like, most humans have lots of bad qualities without seeing the bad qualities of that. And so a part of the reason I think of Bitcoin's success is this, like, Satoshi character that's out there that is kind of like the deity of crypto, and we can all believe in this deity, and without all the bad things that often come with humans. And then you have in the Ethereum world, you have this Vitalik character, and he is just weirdly a good person, and so he just doesn't have as many.
But is he deistic? Is he semi-deistic?
I think he's semi. Yeah, he would be like a semi-god or something like that, right? And so he's just weirdly at least for everything I've read about him and everything I've seen about him, he just seems like a genuinely good person who's trying to do the right thing. I'm sure he makes mistakes all the time, but he doesn't have as many of the human foibles as most humans, as the rest of us. And so, even though he is a real person, and you could meet him and touch him and get to know him, and I'm sure he'll make some terrible mistakes and do, like all humans do. He is weirdly incredibly good. And so much more so than almost any other person involved in tech, right? It's really hard to think of anyone else who's anywhere at that level. And so it allows you to ascribe some sort of trust in, so you have this trust in Bitcoin because of the Satoshi character. You have a trust in Ethereum because of the Vitalik character. And I think this is and this is the way these things can really start to get going. This is why I'm very long on those two platforms, because these two platforms are very, they're not just about like the technical ability or, there is like a core trust in a belief in this system going forward. It's a bit of a religion, right? And so you need to, in any type of religion, there's usually some sort of core figure in that religion, and it's very important to have a high belief in that core figure.
So you're telling me that a factionalized religion that's led by an anonymous deity and a non-anonymous semi-deity is a healthy situation?
Yeah, absolutely. As long as you believe in that, right? And so if you were like the Soviet Union in the 30s, like, yes, there's Stalin that's out there, but like nobody really thought he was a good person. No one even in the Soviet Union at the time thought he was a good person. Like there were some people in America who were crazy who thought he was a good person, but basically there was no one who lived in the Soviet Union who actually. So you just like no one really believed in the system that was in the system. So like it was like communism was always this like fraught religion where like everyone in the system never believed in the system because the deities were always bad. They're kind of bad people who are kind of running the systems. And so it's important in any type of like religious experience that you, especially if it's like a more centralized one, and weirdly, even though like Bitcoin is decentralized, also like centralized in this kind of like deity, right? And that you have some sort of belief in the core leader, even if that leader is dead, right? In the core leader of the system.
But even if we just focus on Vitalik, so you have a guy who is really good at appearing virtuous, really good at wearing tie-dye t-shirts and doing eccentric behavior that looks vaguely positive, still can't build a scalable payment system, still can't build a scalable smart contract system. Like, at what point do we stop taking this platform seriously? Like, it's not scaling.
Well, it's hard. And so, it in some ways it is scaling in many, many different ways. And there's, many different things that are getting built on top of it. And it's exciting and interesting. And there's all these different things that are happening. And there's like all these interesting innovations that are starting to happen. They're still small, whether they're NFTs or smart contracts or, whatever it is, right? It's early, but it's exciting. It's
all red herrings, right? It's like, look at our NFTs. I'm like, where's my micropayments? Why can't I pay a guy in Nigeria 5 cents to transcribe something?
Yeah, well, that isn't here yet, but you could see a world where that's coming.
Would you feel comfortable putting your money through a semi-decentralized system? Let's say something that's decentralized at the cloud provider level. Let's say you have a blockchain that's synchronized between all the best cloud providers. Let's say you take 1,000 of the best cloud providers in the world and you build a decentralized blockchain between them. Is that trusted enough to run our financial system?
Whether it's decentralized or centralized, I think you can have decentralized systems that are trusted and centralized systems that are trusted or some sort of hybrid. And so I don't know that they're like the centralization or not is important. The centralization, it depends on who's doing the centralization, right? And so, if you're in certain countries, you might not trust the central authorities of those countries today. If you're in other countries, you may have higher trust in the central authorities. I don't like. It's like most of my money in like. All my money is tracked by the IRS or, whatever. Like I have trust in the U.S. government. I trust the central authority. But, maybe if I lived in another place, I would have, if I lived in Venezuela or something like that, maybe I'd have very low trust in the central authority, and some sort of decentralized monetary system would be more appealing to me.
All right. Rank the following 3 planned economies: Xi Jinping's planned economy, or call it the China planned economy, the Vitalik Buterin planned economy, or the Collison planned economy.
I don't think I know enough to rank any of those.
All right,
three.
describe the planned economies.
I don't know if I know enough to even describe any of those three planned economies.
Would you prefer?
My day job is SafeGraph. That's what I spend most of my time on. So
all right,
I
describe
don't
the SafeGraph planned economy.
Well, I don't know if there's like a planned economy, but
If we could live in a planned economy designed by SafeGraph, if we had to live in a planned economy designed by SafeGraph.
Well, I do think that
we've lost all our leaders.
I do think we should be living in a world where facts are more central, and so if you think of like you ever read like the Foundation series or something?
I haven't.
Okay, it's a good series. I'd recommend.
Is there a movie?
There's going to be a movie, I think, coming out. I heard that there's going to be a movie. But the one of the premises is, of the series is that you having these facts kind of collected in some sort of place, like an encyclopedia or something like that, is very, very important for societies to go to move forward. And I would like to see a more I'd say, there is importance in opinion and understanding and interpreting and et cetera. But I think I think we've moved too much in the world to that, and less of the world of actually just like determining that this is a true statement, this is a true fact. And so there's a pendulum. You could always swing too far one way or the other. But I would like to see a world where we revere those that are trying to hold the facts. And in some ways, like if you think of like the archivist at the Library of Congress or something like that, like they're trying to preserve things, they're trying to preserve the facts or something like that. I have a real reverence for those people that were, or the librarian or something like that. Like I have a real reverence for those types of people. They're not actually
the used bookstore operators.
They're not the innovator themselves. They're not the author. They're not the creator, but they're kind of the maintainer. And they're the kind of these unsung heroes that are incredibly important. And the Foundation series is filled with some of these folks as well.
Like librarians.
Yeah, exactly. They're kind of filled with these types of unsung heroes, and they're very important to maintaining culture. They're very important to things, and that's the way we started SafeGraph. There's some humility involved in starting a company where you don't want to put yourself at the center. You're just you're there really trying to record what's happening, trying to record the truth. And putting out there. And this is why I love Wikipedia. With all of its problems, Wikipedia obviously has tons of problems. Anyone can go through it. I just love the fact that, at its core mission, it's trying to describe facts that are out there and trying to get those facts to everybody in the world. There isn't a gate to who gets to see it, or if you have a certain view, you can't see the facts or whatever. They're trying to open up to everybody. And again, you can use those facts for bad. You can learn about something and then use that and weaponize it. And, these things can be weaponized. But I think getting that knowledge out there is still more good than bad. And it's essentially a really good thing for the world.
Here's a puzzle. What do products like Dropbox, Slack, Zoom, and Asana all have in common? The answer is they were all successful because they became enterprise ready. Becoming enterprise ready means adding security and compliance features required by enterprise IT admins. When you add these features, enterprise users can buy your product, and they'll buy a lot. These features unlock larger deals and faster growth. But enterprise features are super complex to build. They have lots of weird edge cases, and they typically require months or years of precious engineering time. Thankfully, there's now a better solution. WorkOS is a developer platform to make your app enterprise ready. With a few simple APIs, you can immediately add common enterprise features like single sign-on, SAML, SCIM user provisioning, and more. Developers will find beautiful docs and SDKs that make integration a breeze. WorkOS is trying to be like Stripe for enterprise features. WorkOS powers apps like Webflow, Hopin, Vercel, and more than 100 others. The platform is rock solid, fully SOC 2 compliant, and ready for even the largest enterprise environments. So what are you waiting for? Integrate WorkOS today and make your app enterprise ready. To learn more and get started, go to softwareengineeringdaily.com/workOS. That's softwareengineeringdaily.com/workOS. I want to take a minute to thank today's sponsor, Dynatrace. Dynatrace's software intelligent platform delivers automatic and intelligent observability to simplify cloud complexity and accelerate digital transformation. So if you're a developer, a DevOps engineer, or an SRE under pressure to develop code and release faster, or if you're spending hours dealing with outages due to buggy software, or if you're just getting bogged down doing manual testing and validation, check out Dynatrace Cloud Automation, the recently announced module of the Dynatrace platform. Dynatrace Cloud Automation helps increase collaboration between dev and production teams around a single source of truth. It accelerates delivery pipelines with the automated orchestration of CI/CD and remediation workflows, and it ensures risk-free releases by evaluating quality gates and service-level objectives earlier in the lifecycle. See why Dynatrace is radically different and try it free for 15 days at dynatrace.com/se-daily. That's dynatrace.com/se-daily.
All right, let's do a 6-minute World of DaaS interlude. So you get to host a mini 6-minute episode of World of DaaS with me as your guest. Pretend I'm a data vendor.
Well, so one of the things I like, and I'd be interested in your thoughts on podcasts. So, I mean, I have never done a podcast without massive prep. So I write all my questions ahead of time. I send all the questions to the guests ahead of time. I just like really deep. I'm editing them. I'm spending a lot of time. I have a producer.
Wait, you do the audio editing?
No. The editing.
Oh, yeah,
of
the questions. Got it.
Editing the questions. Like I have our producer, and she and I work on the questions for a long time. We usually try to send it to the guests often a week before the show, so they have a chance to go through it, go back and forth on the and really trying to like learn about like so, and spend like a lot of time just trying to think like, what do I really want to know about this business or about this other types of things, and I don't think I could do a World of DaaS episode with you because I haven't spent like the many weeks leading up to this interview thinking about your business or thinking about like what I want to know from you. And I think there's different types of people that are out there. There's like the, people that are react in different types of time. And there's like these like super like witty, like fast on their feet, like someone, let's say in the British Parliament or something like that, they're funny and they're very quick with the quip, right? That's not me at all. Like I need to be, I don't need to spend months on something, but I often need to spend like hours kind of on something, like thinking it through, getting to a point. I can make a decision relatively quickly. I don't need days to make a decision or something like that. But I'm not the one who's like coming up with like the smart, cool answer like right off the bat or something like that. I'm not super quick on my feet.
So first 5 years of Software Engineering Daily, I did at least a page and a half of prep before every interview. Uh-huh. You remember my stacks of paper that I would always come to interviews with. I'd have 3 to 4 pages of paper. Yep. For you, it was 3 to 4 pages.
Yeah.
For the average person, it's 1.5 pages.
Yep.
You answer questions probably 60% of the time that most people answer questions. So you have a 40% like condensation function.
Okay.
Which is great. More people should have that. But the reason I stopped doing it is because I found this algorithm that I like to use. And basically the algorithm is instead of like having this piece of paper in front of you, which is like your storage, this is like your database. Like basically you're coming with a database prepared.
Yep.
And every time that you want to ask a question, you have to access the database, and it takes you all the time that it would take to access a database, which is actually like fairly time consuming. Yep. Rather than that, you only keep one variable in your head, and it's just in your head. So it's at memory access speed. It's like random access memory. The one variable is like X equals the best question that you can ask this person in this given span of time.
Yeah.
It's just the best question. That's all you keep. You're constantly updating it. So whenever the person's talking, you're just constantly running what they're saying.
There's no way I could do that. Like I love that about you, and I think that's amazing. And I've definitely like heard many. I've followed a lot of different interviewers that are good at those types of things. Like that's just not, I would fail at that particular.
You think so?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, but isn't it basically like you always have at least one thought at the forefront of your mind, right? So it's basically like what is the thought that is at the forefront of your mind phrased as a question?
Yeah, and my guess is like 70% of those might not be that good.
Or
you
even
know,
you just make a statement. Or you just pause. If you have nothing to say, you just pause. And eventually they'll say something. And you can edit the pause.
Yep. We're just going to go on the pause here, right?
And you said something.
Totally. I felt uncomfortable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the listener feels uncomfortable too, but it catches their attention.
Yeah.
That to me is modern podcasting.
Yeah.
You can't do scripted anymore. If you do scripted, nobody will pay attention.
That might be true. Maybe that's why your audience of Software Engineering Daily is so much bigger than the World of DaaS audience. Yeah.
Not for long. Yeah. The other thing you could do, and I think I encourage you to do this a little bit, but I really think this would be interesting, is if you just interview people at SafeGraph, like talk about the business. There's so much you could talk about that would keep you as a closed source business. That would effectively be like really interesting marketing
I definitely,
like the Inside Intercom podcast. Did you ever listen to that?
No.
It's like literally what it sounds like. It's like the CEO just interviewing people.
We're definitely going to start doing that. Just kind of like the building in public type of thing. Yeah. So we'll start doing that. Probably starting in 2022. We actually have the guests lined up all the way through the end of this year. But we'll start doing that as well. We'll start building a little bit more in public and having a kind of okay, here's a strategic problem that we're grappling with, and making it. And I think first we'll probably do a few that are just for employees only, just to get our foot in the door. So just like an internal podcast just for our own employees, which is kind of, I think will be a fun thing to kind of build in public, at least with the let's say at the time I'll have 150 people or something in the company. And then once we, I think, find our footing, we'll start to release that a little bit to the broader sense. I think that'd be really fun. It's dangerous, but I think part of the reason it's fun is that it is a little dangerous.
Yeah, and I mean, you get to edit it. Like, it's not live.
That's right.
It's not live.
Yeah.
What do you think about this problem of, like, all this basically unstructured podcast transcription and audio data that hasn't really been used for anything yet? Like, the Patrick O'Shaughnessy's trying to do something with Colossus there. There's a couple other people I've seen who have really tried to transcribe everything, like listen notes. Yeah. But you kind of can't do it. It's too expensive to transcribe everything. But it seems like there's probably a lot of like pretty good latent information that's semi-structured, but nobody's really figured out how to structure it. You think there's something there, or is it is it too unstructured?
Well, it's even hard to do it with just like text, right? So which obviously would be easier to do than podcasts, because you already start with the transcription. So just imagine all the different blogs that people have written and stuff like that. It's incredible, interesting content that's out there, and just like, how do you structure that? How do you manage that? Like, it's actually like even Google can't really do a good job. So it's a really hard problem. It's an exciting problem. I mean, we do a lot of stuff where we're trying to read text about things, like, again, like store hours or something like that. It could be written in many, many different formats, and that's a relatively structured thing, store hours. But you can imagine just all the different ways of like writing down your store hours or something, and we have to somehow like crawl that and parse it and understand it, and it's different on every different website, and that's just like one very, very specific thing. Imagine if you're trying to like generalize to podcasts about sports and things about science and religion and relationship advice. It's like it becomes a really, really hard problem really, really, really quickly.
Top 3 SaaS products you discovered in the last year?
I think that's a hard one.
Okay, go ahead.
I like ComSore.
What is that one?
ComSore.
Oh, that's the community thing.
Yeah, community thing, like on Slack.
Did you look at the options for that product category?
Options?
I mean, there's like other things that are sort of like ComSore. Or did you just look at ComSore and go with it?
I don't remember what we did at SafeGraph.
There's one called Orbit.
Okay.
Orbit.love, I think is the...
Okay, cool. I'll check it out. So it's a good... I end up loving it so much I end up investing in ComSore.
Nice.
So,
can you do that with pretty much any business that you see at this point?
No. I often, after I love a product, I often will call up the CEO and like, so first of all, sometimes they'll take my meeting, sometimes they won't. I'll be like, I love your product. It's so awesome. Like, I just want to give you some ideas about, what I like about it or something like that. And they're often flattered, so they're willing to take my call.
By the way, can you ever do equity trades? Can you say, I'll trade you some of SafeGraph equity for your equity in your company? Or is that just not legal?
It's probably legal, but it's probably too hard to do because probably everyone always like
That would be
overvalues
awesome,
their
right?
equity.
Wouldn't that
and
be
stuff.
the easiest thing to do if you could every time you see a product you like, hey, say, hey, can I trade you some SafeGraph equity?
I don't even know exactly how you would do it from like a tax. It's honest. Like,
Forget the taxes. Like
if you think about like the reason why a currency is that it's just like it's so much easier. And it's just like I just put money in.
but that's a bug, not a feature.
I don't think so. I actually think it's a real feature.
You don't want a SafeGraph token.
Well, I mean, but then everyone's going to value that token in a different way. Like I do have a SafeGraph token. I have equity. I have a share of SafeGraph stock.
Which
right?
would be better if it was liquid.
I don't necessarily think that's true because everything is liquid. It's very, like even when I buy currencies, it's like, well, they basically even when if you buy a cryptocurrency, right? They usually will put it in. They usually only put in two prices, in dollars and in ETH, right? Those are the only two things that you can buy a token in usually. They don't even put it in Bitcoin. They don't even put it in, like, you just think of like all the other things you could put it in Apple shares or whatever. Like they could tell you the price in anything, but they usually tell you two things. There's some USD token, whatever that is, Tether,
But they could
or whatever.
price it in Amazon equity. Like
they could price it in whatever they want, but they don't because it's too complicated. It's like you don't want to list a price in like thousands of things.
But that's a UX. That's a UX problem. That's not like a currency problem.
No, I think you want some sort of. I think the dollar is a very simple conversion. First of all, we live with the dollar. You and I live in the United States, so we know what the dollar is worth. We know what we can buy with the dollar. We know how much it takes to earn a dollar. We know how much what we So it's a very simple thing to quote everything in that thing. Now, it doesn't mean these other currencies. If you just think of like the rise of real estate in Cupertino, right? Okay, the rise of real estate in Cupertino in dollars is positive. The rise of real estate in Cupertino in Apple share is negative, right? So, and that is what people are using really to buy their real estate in Cupertino. They're using Apple shares. They're not using dollars.
Did you make this discovery on SafeGraph, or did you make this discovery otherwise?
We make all our discoveries on SafeGraph, of course. But
you're doing pricing data too?
No, not yet, but one day.
God, that'd be cool.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. But but like when like the average economist looks at the price in housing in Cupertino, they just look at it in dollars, and it's just a simple way. And then okay, those prices are going up 20% a year or something like that. Okay, they probably have some sort of understanding. Okay, well, these people probably, a lot of them work at Apple, and people at Apple have become wealthy because of the appreciation of the stock price, et cetera. They're not thinking about it in all these different currencies because there's so many different currencies in our life. Once you get to a certain level of success, you're probably dealing with like dozens and sometimes more different types of currencies, and just like so much easier to convert them into one or maybe two. If let's say you live between the US and Europe or something like that, you have a small number of currencies that you're, and then ideally, even like if you think of like the euro and the dollar, yes, they fluctuate between them, but it's like the conversion between the US and dollar has been relatively stable over, let's say the last 20 years or so. It's not like crazy fluctuation and difference. So it's always relatively easy to make that conversion. Whereas like the relationship between Apple shares and the dollar have been like incredibly unstable over the last 20 years. And so like if you're just starting to quote things in Apple shares, just like even understanding the inflation of the shit, like it'd just be so hard to go do. So it's nice to have a common language. Just like you and I both are speaking English right now. Like I could speak one language, you could speak a different language. We could have a translator in the middle. But that wouldn't be like fun for the listeners to listen to.
What if there were subtitles?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe, and you could get the subtitle in your own language or something like that. But again, there would be a cost for us to actually having a real-time conversation if like, unless there's like a real-time subtitle.
What if in real time we fade it to the background and then do like audio, like the robotic audio, like the Stephen Hawking voice?
As you yourself were saying, doing transcriptions on the fly is really costly and really, really difficult.
No, but we're not airing on the fly. Like we have a pre-production process.
But our conversation is happening on the fly. So you're saying something, I need to respond to you.
But the whole production's for the benefit of the listener and the benefit of the viewer.
Yeah, but sure, you could send me a question right now, and we could do this async, and I could be at my home, and then I could answer the
Yes,
question
we
and
could
go
do
back,
that.
and we could do this over, and
And it would be interesting.
A chess
I mean, you're
game,
proving my
an
point.
async
This would be
chess game.
interesting.
Maybe we should do that sometime.
Probably should do that.
But and we should do it in different languages. You can go learn Thai, and I'll go.
But seriously,
I'll
you
go
just
learn,
proved my point, because you just
uh,
basically made an observation that proved that if you price something in Apple shares, it can be considered from another angle, which is kind of more interesting.
Well, it certainly is interesting. It's just really good to have a common. These join keys are so important to our life. I think they're the most underappreciated thing. So language is a join key. The dollar is a join key. The meter, whatever, the meter is a join key.
The shared reality.
There's some sort of shared join key, and anyone who's ever dealt with databases before knows they're so important to instead of Unix time. I love Unix time. Okay, it's a super imperfect thing. It's like an integer, and it started in January 1st, 1971 or something. And it's why did they start that? It's you have to go negative time before. It's this weird integer, right? That but it's standard, and it's a standard thing that we. And again, any join key is imperfect. There's no such. The whole idea, if you're going to agree on a join case, it has to be imperfect because it has to join all these different, and the English language is the most imperfect thing. If you have kids and you start to see them learn English, you're like, what the heck? This is the terrible language that we all speak. It doesn't make any sense at all. And the QWERTY keyboard is this terrible thing that we all use, right? So there's all these different join keys in our life, and they all have imperfections in them, but life wouldn't work without join keys. And the more join keys you have, the more you can actually collaborate and do. If you even think of coding, okay, are you coding in assembly or something? Are you coding in the machine language? Are you?
I agree with you, but Apple shares are a join key. We have a shared understanding of what an Apple share is.
I have no idea what the price of Apple shares are today. I actually don't know.
I don't know what the price of a dollar is.
And I don't know what the price was 3 years ago.
Do you know what the price of a dollar is relative to a Bitcoin, or relative to an ETH?
I right this second. No,
exactly. So what's the difference?
Well, I think the dollar is a better join key.
But don't you want both as alternatives? If you can have a bigger universe of possibilities.
You get paid in many different ways, and you can get paid in your shares in your company, or if you join SafeGraph, you get paid in dollars, and you get paid in shares in your company. But you also get paid in many other ways. You get paid in. I get to learn. I get certain certain prestige. I get paid in. You're not paying me anything for this podcast, right? But I get prestige for being on this podcast, and I get learning from being on this. So you are paying me in something.
All I'm trying to say is,
right?
if you want to buy ComStor as quickly and reliably as possible, probably the best way to do that is to offer SafeGraph shares.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
Because now this guy who has no time to do due diligence has to do due diligence on this other company.
You got a great email signature. You're offering free data in your email signature. Who doesn't want equity in that guy?
Well, but he doesn't know. If I say he has no idea what a share is worth, and he doesn't know what the preference stack is on top of it, and that's not his job. His job is to go build a
blindly
company.
trust. You blindly trust in this scenario.
Well, how do you know? How do you say I want 5 shares of ComScore for 1 share of SafeGraph? Is that a good deal? Is that a bad? Maybe it should be 5 shares of SafeGraph for 1 share of ComScore.
Luckily we have these things called valuations, which usually price to some nominal degree.
It's you don't know if people are making things up. You don't know what the shares are.
Send them that over email. Send them the TechCrunch article over email.
But what? The TechCrunch doesn't say the number of outstanding
Send
shares
the Crunchbase,
in the company.
The Carta public. You can't share with Carta or something.
It's so. You're taking a very simple thing and making it super complex.
You're taking a super complex thing and keeping it complex.
Why is it complex to pay in dollars? It's the most simple thing.
Why wouldn't you want the alternative?
Whenever I go to a store, I always buy in dollars. It's simple. It's
Wouldn't
easy.
you like to be able to buy a banana with SafeGraph shares? Conceivably, if you could.
Well, I would like to buy, but would I like someone else to every time I wanted to go? Someone wanted to pay me for something. I have to go evaluate. Let's say I want to I'm selling my car right now, right? So let's say my car's worth $5,000 in dollars, and someone's like, I want to give you 42 shares in this thing, right? That I'm doing. Well, now I have to go I have to spend all this time to go evaluate. And then someone else comes to me and says, oh, and I got one thing, I got a car to sell, right? I can sell one guy, he give me 42 shares in his company. Another guy is giving me 50 shares in their company. And then another gal is giving me 20 shares in their company. I don't know what's better. And now I have to spend all this time like evaluating what is what. I just want to sell my car to the highest bidder. It's so much easier. Like if I was selling my car for $5,000, someone offered me $5,100. I'm like, done.
I mean, you're free to say in your opening salvo, I will only transact in dollars for this transaction. You're free to say that. But it would be nice to be able to also say, I will accept SafeGraph shares for this car.
Well, sure. I think you.
I'm just saying that's the world I want to live in.
Yeah. Well, I think you do.
And you can do that right now. Well, you can
now.
offer SafeGraph shares for ComStore shares, and it would be great.
Well, I don't know. First of all, I don't want to sell a SafeGraph share. So, like I own dollars,
so
and
you should be able to
SafeGraph.
trade shares in some other company you own. Probably there's some laggard that you would rather own ComStore than the laggard.
Well,
the portfolio
but that would be
laggard.
somewhat unfair to the CEO. And then plus, like they're using these. They are like. In this case, I'm not buying the shares from the founder, right? I'm buying the shares from the company, and the company takes the money that the investor puts in and then invests that money in, like, say, people's salaries usually to actually make the company more valuable, right? So let's say a company raises $10 million. It's usually not going out the door to a person and they're just keeping it. It's actually staying in the company's treasury, and then they use that to go pay. So it needs to be somewhat of a liquid thing that other people are going to want. So if they were just going to take the SafeGraph shares and convert that into dollars so that they can go pay people, well, they might as well just have dollars to begin with, because now you have like transaction costs that are coming in. And most of the people they hire, like they want dollars. They want ComStore stock as well, probably, right? But they also need to have, like someone usually doesn't work for no dollars. Some people might, and just stock. But the vast majority of people like still need to pay their rent, and they need to buy groceries, and they need to do other things, and they need dollars to do those things. So it's a very simple, like join keys. People can get very complicated about stuff, and like everyone always wants to make a better join key, and everybody always wants to make a better, other types of things, but they're so important. And every time and also the people who complain the most about join keys are the engineers, because they're like, I can create a better join key. Like this join key doesn't make sense. And yes, they are like the meter has problems. Like all these different join keys that we use in our life all have incredibly weird problems that we all know about. The English language is like the worst. Is like almost the worst join key, but it's still the core join key that we all use for everything. And with like Esperanto is so much of a better join key. And it was like a beautiful creation, basically created by like amazing engineers. But like, you have these like cold start problems that are hard to, would it be better if like the whole world was speaking Esperanto? Probably. Like maybe that would be a better thing. I mean, I don't know. I've actually never spoke Esperanto. I don't know that much about the language, but like maybe that would be a better world. I don't know, but it's not going to happen. We live in a world where basically like most interesting conversations happen over English. The whole world has decided for whatever reason that this is the join key. Some people, they're native English speakers. Some people, it's their second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh language, but they've decided this is going to be the core join key. When we go to a conference, when we talk, amongst folks, whatever, like we're going to use this as a join key where we can understand. If you grow up in Sweden, like you understand, I've got to go learn English because it's a join key so I can have conversations in other types of places, whether academia or even just to listen to this podcast. It's not translated to Swedish, I don't think.
Or you got a hard stop in like 10 minutes.
Okay,
last two SaaS products.
Oh, last two SaaS products. Well, I mean, it's not something I started using this year, but I mean, the SaaS product I think is just like an amazing SaaS product is Zapier. And it's
how amazing is that company?
It's a great company.
There's not really any competitors, right? There's like an open source Zapier.
No, there are competitors that are a little bit higher end. There's this French company called Integromat, which is really cool. It's a little bit like if you're like a software developer and have that mentality.
Do y'all use Zapier a lot, by the way, in SafeGraph?
Yeah, absolutely.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's got lots of problems and like,
but it's really high margin too. Those API businesses are such good businesses.
It's a great company in every way. Their cost of acquisition is so low because they have a great SEO component. It's a great company. It has problems like they have Zaps. When their Zaps fail, they don't always tell you that it fails, and so it's like, oh, that Zap wasn't running for 3 weeks. Like I had no idea. Like so, there are definitely some things that they could do to make it better. But it's an incredible tool, both for like your personal life. You can do things for your personal life. That's really cool.
Your personal Zaps stuff you use?
Yeah, absolutely. I do like little personal things,
napkin graph related.
Yeah,
Zaps.
yeah, exactly. Or I'll do things in like a news reading app, and it'll automatically update on my Twitter feed, or lots of other types of things.
What is a news reading app? Like Pocket?
Yeah, like Pocket or something like that. Yeah. So like imagine Pocket, you can star something there, and then I've got my normal Twitter handle Auren, right? That
and then you're reading.
But I've got Auren's reads, and that's odd. Like so, if I like something,
I was wondering what that thing was.
Yeah.
So when you like something in Pocket,
Pocket automatically puts it on that.
And how much does that cost you? Is that like less than a cent in Zapier or something?
I have no idea, because I just pay I just pay like a monthly fee for, so my marginal cost is $0 included in the monthly fee. It's a great product.
Yeah.
And you can get a company wide product as well. So you can get it for your company, and let's say the company wide Zap product I think costs like $3,000 a year, which for a company is
wait, what?
Yeah.
$3,000 a year for unlimited usage?
Not unlimited, but it scales pretty well. At some point you're going to end up paying more. SafeGraph.
So you pay $3,000. Oh,
we paid $3,000 until I think 1 or 2 months ago.
Wow.
That's great. And then we had to scale to higher. Yeah. So for a company to pay $3,000 for like a middleware product, it's nothing.
Do you know off the top of your head any of the random Zaps that you use that you can disclose?
We have so many. I mean,
many.
Like if you go to any company that's good at marketing teams are really good at using Zaps. There's going to be like hundreds of Zaps, or recruiting. Any good company that's good at recruiting is going to have like hundreds of Zaps strung together.
Right.
So the recruiting is essentially just marketing, right? So those would be like, it basically allows you to do things that like before you needed engineers to go do. Most marketing teams, most recruiting teams don't have like an engineer, a good software engineer embedded in them. And so they have to use these APIs or these middleware tools or other types of things to, whether it's like Segment or, whatever it is that you're using. Did
you invest in Airbyte? Or do you just use it at the company?
Oh, I invest in Airbyte. Yeah, Airbyte. Every single LiveRamp alumni company is.
That's a LiveRamp alumni company?
Yeah.
Wow.
Basically the whole engineering team, including the CEO, is a LiveRamp.
You know what's funny is that the competitors are not open source, and I'm an investor in High Touch. I'm sort of encouraging him to go open source. I just feel like all this stuff should be open source. High Touch is
the Airbyte competitor?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Essentially, they're reverse ETL. Airbyte is forward and reverse, I believe.
Okay.
And Fivetran's forward. It should be in the same product. You want forward and reverse ETL in the same product. Airbyte does it all in open source. Airbyte's the winner as far as I'm concerned. And I'm saying this as an investor in High Touch. Or maybe it'll be multi-winner.
Look, they're a new company, and there's a lot. One of my
French guys, right?
Sorry?
French guys, right?
Yeah, exactly. One of my close friends, Todd Sacerdoti, started Pipedream, and they've got a different take on it. And so it's also like who's the customer. Like in Pipedream's case, it's the software engineer, and other, in Zapier's case, it's like the marketer, right? And so it's so it's a different, sometimes you have a different product for a different type of customer, for SafeGraph, like we sell data, but like our primary customer are data scientists and machine learning engineers. So we have a specific type of customer that we're building this data for, and maybe a different customer may not find as much value out of our data, right? And so you have a prototype of a customer, and then you end up building for, if you think of like Salesforce, okay, well they have a very prototype of a customer that they're building their thing for. And maybe over time you can like expand the number of types of customers that can use your product.
Okay, last SaaS product.
Okay.
Give me the Starbucks mobile app.
I like Starbucks mobile app.
It's pretty good.
Yeah,
pretty good.
It's really good. Well,
except what's the worst feature of that app?
Oh, I don't know.
The default reload amount.
Oh, default
reload amount.
Like $20.
$25.
Yeah.
I'm like, really? You're grifting me, Starbucks?
Yeah. Well, in a you could like imagine an era of negative interest rates. You would put like probably $2,000 on your Starbucks app.
Why?
you can imagine like some sort of error where like you're getting negative interest
But
rates.
we're not in that era.
Yeah. Well,
we're not anywhere close to that era.
Yeah, that's true. I don't mind. It's $25. So, I'm not a big Starbucks. I don't go to Starbucks all the time, but I love Starbucks. It's an incredible company. Also a SafeGraph customer. So I especially love them. So I only buy from our customers.
So you'd prefer if the default was $80?
No, I think it's fair. I think it's because again they want to lower their transaction fees, right?
25's okay.
Again,
it's okay.
It goes exactly to your payments problem. If the payments were zero, then they wouldn't need to do it. But because there's actually a pretty high, and remember, like Starbucks, like the average Starbucks, let's say transaction is let's say $5 or something like that. So you're because you get that 30-cent initial payment plus let's say 2.2% on top of that. That 30 cent is a huge fraction of a $5 payment. So now 30 cent of a $25 payment. Now you've just lowered that to a massive amount. So if the payments were lower, then you would be they would be less likely to.
It's a good point, I guess. It's a good point, I guess. Maybe it's not such a grift. All right. Well, great episode. Anything else you want to talk about?
This is really fun.
All right.
Thank you, Jeff.
Cool.
Yeah.
Great.